Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel that takes on issues related to narcissism and narcissistic relationships. Today, we're going to take on a very interesting issue called spiritual bypassing. And it's not just for narcissists, lots of folks do it, but it is a unique fit into the world of narcissism. So let's talk about spiritual bypassing. Now, you may not know the term, but spiritual bypassing, it's actually a term that was, I think, coined in the 70s or 80s by a guy named John Wellwood. And it's this idea of using spiritual beliefs or practices as a way to circumvent real feelings or processing real pain. There is a real arrogance to spiritual bypassing, as though the bypasser can't be bothered with mere human feelings, but instead they hide behind spiritual explanations. Now listen, I am the first to acknowledge that psychological pain is a beast, and it would be nice to run away from it, and I know my clients always want to run away from it many times, but that's not how it works. The only way out is through, and there are no shortcuts. All the spiritual bypassers seem to think there's a shortcut. Now, this is a channel about narcissism, so why am I talking about this? As you can imagine, narcissistic folks would love to take shortcuts on psychological pain. As the internet and social media are commodifying mental health and spirituality the same way they do clothes and shoes and cosmetics, narcissistic folks are jumping on wellness and growth as a way to once again self-righteously lord over other people. With spiritual bypassing, we see the coward's move of not facing the real pain, pretending to be above uncomfortable emotions. There's also an invalidation element to spiritual bypassing, with the bypassers often being those toxic positivity distributors, believing you can breathe, chant, mantra, meditate, or yoga yourself through anything. And if you can't, then that means there's something wrong with you. Spiritual bypassers often look as though they are in a perpetual state of denial. Everything's fine, everything's great. I have love and light in me. They're sort of robotically positive and believe that they are bigger than their emotions. Simply put, as I see it, spiritual bypassing is actually quite cowardly. The invalidation element of spiritual bypassing means that the bypasser will also not be able to hear about other people's difficult situations and may tell you that you're inviting more negativity by being negative, or if you set boundaries, you're viewed as limiting the flow of love. Spiritual bypassing is also an enabler's game. Let's say you share your experiences of narcissistic abuse that you're having with a partner or a family member. The spiritual bypassers in your life may push back with saying, well, maybe you're not trying hard enough, or you need to go high when they go low, and basically piling all of the responsibility for the toxic situation on the person who isn't being toxic. Narcissistic folks don't like negativity. They think it's a downer, and they don't actually think their tantrums and abuse are negativity. They think it's an appropriate reaction to their contempt and frustration with others, which they'd never call contempt, by the way. So spiritual bypassing is a way of shaming you for having a negative feeling or an emotional experience, and then tossing some silly platitude your way, like, I only want positive energy in my presence. And so you feel silenced in your relationship with them. The wellness crazes that we see out there of all positive, no negative, happiness is the only path forward, and heaven forbid you try to call out toxic people. Well, that's just too negative. Spiritual bypassing then really benefits the narcissistic folks who have a world of wellness influencers behind them, saying that if someone is having a negative experience or a negative emotion, then there must be something wrong with their energy, and they just need to adjust their chakras or invoke some pseudo-mysticism, leaving the person who may be experiencing narcissistic abuse as though there is something wrong with them, and the narcissist as the winner in this situation, because everyone thinks they are just good vibes and love and light because they're not saying anyone's toxic. The reason narcissistic folks drop out of therapy at a higher rates than others, and they do, the research has shown that, is because therapy takes a minute. Therapy means being with negative emotions and processing them. There is no quick fix, no magic pill, no wishful talisman. I have worked with many narcissistic clients who've said, make this go away, as though therapy is a TikTok video. I don't want to feel bad. And when I talk to them about emotional vulnerability and doing the work, they either yelled at me, got angry at me, or quit therapy. Honestly, if the narcissistic folks out there want to just walk around and talk about how they're above human emotion and can't be bothered with pain, and they may actually be delusionally grandiose enough to believe they are, and then spout spiritual hooey, then they can do them. The problem is when it trickles into the shaming and invalidating the experience of survivors. That's when I can't get down with it. Everything else in life is quick these days. So why wouldn't just wiping out those inconvenient emotions like grief, sadness, worry, anxiety, or even experiences like trauma be quick too? If you have had the experience of these bypassers telling you that you can just think differently and cheer up, you can bypass your way straight out of here. None of us need to cheer up on anyone else's schedule or soften our grief to fit into a more comfortable script with bypassers who can't be bothered with the pain of others. Especially for survivors of narcissistic abuse who are experiencing such a unique grief and pain. The bypassing narcissists and enablers only make this process more painful. Give your pain and emotion space and keep it away from the spiritual bypassers who seem to think that a few deep breaths and a yoga pose and they're on their way to happiness. It doesn't work that way. Thanks again.